Hi, and welcome to another episode of Unlocking Medicare. I'm your host, Tyrone Carr, and today I'm excited. We have another special guest, Gogo Bethke, personal friend and entrepreneur, business owner, mother, wife, and just a pleasure to have her on the show today. So I appreciate you. I know you're very, very busy, so thank you for your time. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. Usually I do my podcast about social media marketing, so today is going to be a little different. I'm excited.
Well, great. So I appreciate you. So I love your story. And just to share with our clients and future clients as well. It's just your whole story. And we met. I think it was 2008. It was at your house with some mutual friends I went to high school with, and I was telling Taylor how, I don't know if you remember this, but she had asked, and I vividly remember it. There was some sushi. It was my first time ever experiencing sushi. And I saw what I thought was avocado, which was wasabi. And so I grabbed a California roll and I took like a big spoon of it. And I don't know if you remember this. I remember Mindy, if you remember Mindy Merkley, she was like standing right next to me. And I just dosed the California roll with it. I just shoved it in my mouth and all of a sudden my whole face just like blew up and nose is running and I'm coughing. And so that was my first experience with wasabi and sushi. So, but yeah, that was at your guys' house there in Peking. And so
my sister did that too. We went to Sushi Zen, and she, I'm from Romania originally, so they don't eat sushi in Romania. And we went the first time, and she thought it was avocado and took a spoonful of it and shoved it in her mouth. And you could see her face. I could tell. She's like, "What's in my mouth? Like, do I swallow it? Can I spit it out in the middle of the restaurant?" Right? Like, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that is not avocado. Spit it out. You cannot swallow that much wasabi. You will die." Right?
I think if I had this sinus infection or cold, it definitely cleared me out. But that was. And to this day, I've told that story for years, and I think it was like 2008 at that particular time. So, and I think you and Christina were working at Cisco or whatever, I think at the time. So if that was the case.
I never worked at Cisco, so where would I work with Christina? Real estate one, probably.
No, well, maybe. I don't know if she was doing real estate.
That's the only place I worked with Christina with.
Pamela, right?
Where else?
Yeah. But anyways.
I remember.
But so we've got these close to 3,000 individual clients on Medicare, and so we're always trying to provide additional value and share any type of insight that we can help them just with their everyday life, whether it be nutrition, diet, it's the day-to-day services from Medicare, financial, whatever it may be. And so if you would share, first give us a little background as to like where you started and where your success is today, and then we've got some questions like to ask that you could share with our clients that could help them. We'd really appreciate it.
So came to the U.S. when I was 21 back in 2003. I'm 41 in December. So I lived here for 20 years. I'm Hungarian by nationality, but originally from Transylvania, Romania. So I speak both of the languages. I came to the country as an au pair, live-in nanny. Right, and stayed with my host parents, helped them raise their kids in Brighton, Michigan. They own FAO Jewelers, if anybody's watching from Michigan, right? So I was their au pair for a while. And I met Dwayne, my husband, who's from Pinckney, Michigan, in a bar at Lou and Carl's, St. Patrick's Day in 2003. So pretty much 2 months after I got to the U.S., I met Dwayne in the bar. We started dating right away. That was a Tuesday. He called me Friday, asked me out Saturday. Sunday, I met his parents. 2 months later, I was moved in. 2 months after that, we were married, right? So it's like, when people ask me, like, when did you meet Dwayne? 2003. When did you marry Dwayne? 2003. We just did it all within months, right? And then I didn't get licensed until 2011. In between, I did all kinds of random jobs, right? I worked at a jewelry store. I worked as a server. I worked in plastics department. I have a restaurant food safety certification. I've been an auditor. Like, you name it, I've done it, right? I like to joke I did a process of elimination, what I don't want to be when I grow up, right? And then real estate kind of fell on my lap. My neighbor, Lisa, is the marketing director for Capital Title, and she thought that I would make a great realtor. So it's technically her idea. It wasn't even my idea originally. So in 2011, I got licensed and I started with a brokerage called Real Estate One. And I stayed with them for 7.5 years. And I went to Keller for 8 months. And then from Keller, I switched to a company called EXP, and I've been with them ever since. I've been a top producing realtor since the third year of my real estate career. And ever since then, today I'm voted #1 social media marketing realtor in the state of Michigan and number 16 in the nation. This year I was nominated and named in the Success magazine alongside Grant Cardone, Tony Robbins, all of the big names as top 125 most influential people in the US in 2022. So I have taken my cute little career from being a licensed agent all the way to having 8 different businesses. So I don't know if I can show you that. Like those books up there, those are each a company, right?
Wow.
I think there's actually at the age of notes, and at least 10 of them, 8 businesses, and then some holding companies and a trust, right? A living trust. So I have grown a little bit. I'm not just, please don't take it the wrong way. Nothing wrong with being just a realtor, right? But I consider myself more of an entrepreneur today than just being in real estate, if that makes sense.
I want to read this. So just for our listeners, so November 2018, Gogo joined EXP Realtor, and which is going to lead to a realty as far as a question. 3 years later, you have Team Gogo. You have this international family, 1,000 plus agents, U.S., Canada, Mexico, France, Brazil. Many of these
You done research.
Yeah, so all these are all
Very
countries that I've visited. So it's impressive because I know what it's like to travel internationally and not be able to speak, different languages. And so that immediately stood out to me like, wow, how impressive is that? So, what would you say? And then I think more importantly, I know what's really, as far as, conversations having in the past, and you helped us, Jess and I sell our home. But you being a mother was always, I remember it was such a huge priority for you, and having, a child that has type 1 diabetes, right? Am I correct? And so I remember that, and that just really, stood out to me as your focus and dedication to being a mother first. I think says a lot about you and your character and the person that you are. So I think that's the most important job in the world, to be honest with you. So I don't say that.
We have a countdown, right? From the moment that they are born, we have about 18 summers with them, right? So I always look at it like with Kobe, I only have 3 more summers. With Duke, I only have 2 more summers, right? Or the other way around, actually. So I want to make sure that I'm present. So I really try to work from 9 to 3-ish, but Monday to Wednesday only. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I have long weekends for the rest of my life. But Monday to Thursday when I work, I'm literally back to back. Monday to Wednesday, right? I'm literally back to back to back to back. So I try to squeeze in as much as I can into 3 days. So then I don't have to. Then I always have my evenings and I always have my weekends and a long weekend open to spend with the family. I feel like we worked way too hard, right? For finally to be able to enjoy the fruit of our labor. So we moved down to Florida. We still have our Michigan home. We're going to spend the summers in Michigan, with school years in Florida. And I have multiple businesses in both states, right? So we go back and forth between the two, but we try to only do business that it's not affecting our family life, mm-hmm. right? And also I feel like so many people work a lifetime and they retire and 2 years later they die.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not what life's supposed to be about. Life is not about to work for the rest of your life and then retire and then have a health issue or not being used to not having anything to do and die of boredom, right? Yeah. I want to be able to enjoy life while I'm young. I want to be able to spend my money that I made, not spend it when I retired and then I'm not healthy enough to go climb Machu Picchu, right? So what I'm trying to teach and coach when I'm talking to people who have the entrepreneurial mindset, right, is to what you make now, how do I say this? I'm not a believer of save your money. Don't get me wrong. We have very healthy savings account and a lot of investments, right? But I want you to do it. I want you to make enough money where saving, you don't feel it and you still get to live life. right? You still get to go on those trips. You still get to buy the nice whatever. You still get to go to a fancy restaurant and order a steak, right? Like, I don't want people to have to save money today in order to have it later on in life, right? And then maybe not have your health or not have your life to actually be able to spend it.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great perspective, and I agree with that. And that's, I mean, what's the point of doing all this, working hard, if you can't enjoy your family? And that's, my family is number one, next to God. But yeah. So here's some questions that, and I know I sent these to you, but just to read. So if I have a client that is contemplating retirement and they want to downsize, actually, let me back before I ask the question. What sets EXP apart versus like a Keller Williams, a Griffith Realty, some bigger name, your competitors? Where do you say the differentiating factors that you guys stand out versus your competition?
Yeah, and I could go on, right? I've been with Keller, I've been with Real Estate One, a family-owned company. Then I went to Keller, which is an international company, right? And then I went to EXP. So I have a little bit of experience, but I don't necessarily, I know this is probably not what you want to hear, but I don't necessarily believe that's the brokerage that makes the agent. It's the agent that makes the experience, right? So you can have a rotten tomato at any single company. I'm sure in insurance world, there are good agents and there are bad agents, right? It doesn't matter what brokerage they are with. So I think most importantly, when you're hiring a realtor, I don't really believe that it matters for the sellers. Mm-hmm. It matters for the agent, because we work for money, right? And depending what brokerage you are with, you have different caps, different cuts, different opportunities and benefits and stacks or no stacks. So from the agent's perspective, it matters. From the seller perspective, in my opinion, it doesn't matter. What does matter is, can the agent market? Because any agent can put it into the MLS. So the way the MLS works is there's this internal system, right? So every realtor has to have membership to the MLS. When they take your listing, they just plug it into the MLS, and the MLS takes it and feeds it onto all of the websites, the Zillows, the Trulios, the Realtor.com, yeah, right? So any realtor would take your listing, they would plug it in, they would automatically feed to all of those websites. So they're not doing anything, oh my gosh. Any agent can do that, right? Any agent can take a yard sign and shove it in your front lawn. The question is, what happens after? Do they go out of their way to actually sell your property? Are they good marketers, right? Do they take it? Do they show up at your house and do a property tour and plaster it all over social media? Like, my social media accounts have over 2 million views a month. So imagine if I go in against somebody who doesn't do anything on social media, just plug it into the MLS. Any agent can do that, right? And then they just sit back and cross their fingers, and hopefully somebody's going to find it on Zillow and pick up the phone to dial, right? Sure. Also, I have a local team in Michigan, and it's mandatory for them to hold every listing open until it sells every single weekend, right? So we hold our listings open because that is our seller's best interest until they find a buyer that's going to buy the home, right? And then also, the next one is negotiations. Like, I wouldn't want to be the other agent if you're going into negotiations, right? Because that is my best skill. Like, I'm a pit bull. Like, I will eat anybody by lunch, right? Like, I am my sellers. I represent their best interests like no one's business. For multiple reasons. A, because that's what I signed, right? I have a fiduciary duty to my sellers to represent their best interest. And sometimes their best interest is not my best interest, but you still have to put their best interest at first, right? And then secondly is because happy clients refer. Right? When my clients are happy, I sold their house fast as possible away for the most amount of money, right? They will tell everybody and their mother. So to answer your question in a roundabout way, I don't think brokerage matters for the sellers. It matters for the agent of how we get paid after the transaction closed. Because everybody nowadays have a website, and everybody nowadays has a CRM program and all of these fancy terms and stuff, right? But most agents, what I would want to check for is, what do they do above and beyond their standard job?
Great answer. So, questions, plural. What advice would you give someone who's contemplating retirement and is considering selling, and they're kind of on the fence?
Yeah, I mean, just depending, right? Like, that's such a loaded question. Is their house paid off?
Yeah.
Right? If their house is paid off, and if it's a huge house where they raise their children, right? It's a 5-bedroom, 3-bed, 5,200 square foot, and now there's just the two of them. They don't need that big house. If I were them, and depending what their goals are, if they're loaded, they can just sit on it, right? And sit on a paid-off house. If they're not loaded and they're strapped for cash, probably what I would do is I would downsize. And then let's say the house is worth, I don't know, $800,000, right? Sell that, go buy yourself a 250 or a 300. Let's say it's 300. You have $500,000, right? I would take that 500 and go buy 2 homes for 250 somewhere closer to city. Rent those things out. Let your renters pretty much pay for your mortgage, which you won't have because you paid cash for it, right? So they're paying you rent. I don't know, let's say $1,800. I don't know what the rent property goes. I haven't done a rent in so long. I would have to run numbers. But that's what I would do. I would then live off of that monthly payment.
Okay.
Or create income for yourself, right? Because if you're sitting on a property that's paid for itself, you're literally losing money.
Absolutely.
That's the stupidest decision you can do.
Right.
So I would just downsize into a little one. But let's see, what if they already downsized, right? Like, what if that's their little house already? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's such a loaded question. And also, what is their end goal? Like, they might be loaded. They might not need to make more money.
Sure.
I can tell you what I wouldn't do. I wouldn't mess with stocks. I don't think you should be investing your money. I think your money should be invested into real estate.
There's so much of that I agree with, and so often I see clients that have a house that's paid off, and they're living on a pension, Social Security check, and that equity only has value if you're leveraging it. Mm-hmm. And so many people are just sitting on that, and there's so much you can do with it. So, being that you have an agency and agents throughout multiple countries. What advice would you give someone who's thinking about relocating? I'm using Florida because that's your primary residence, even though you have the house up here in Michigan still. Like, what would you say to that particular individual? And I've got a lot of clients. We do a lot of business in Florida that you would suggest, making Michigan a primary residence versus Florida or vice versa. What type of advice would you give?
This is my disclosure. I'm no CPA, ask your CPA, right? But Florida doesn't have state taxes, right? So it's kind of nice that you don't have to pay state income taxes. So if you're making a good hefty amount, just state income taxes alone will save you a very nice chunk, right? So naming your Florida residence as your primary will save you on state income taxes. So I would do absolutely Florida. Also, the other thing is research, because it's very different living in Florida than living in Michigan. We just went through that. And a lot of things I didn't know, right? I was driving for 2 months without a sun pass. And I got this bill after bill after bill after bill after bill after bill. And I'm like, what the heck is a sun pass? I had no idea, right? Come to find out, to drive on the highway in Florida, I guess the state has to make their money somehow, sure. Right? You have to have these stickers for your car. Just these little things, right? Here they're sprayed for everything. And if you decide, in Michigan, we never sprayed for anything because we wanted to have as organic lawn, and I wanted my kids to go out there and wrestle in the grass, right? So we didn't spray for anything. If you don't spray for stuff here, you're going to have spiders. I'm not kidding you, as big as your palm. I had a spider in my kitchen. I am not kidding you, this big. I was ready to pack up or set the freaking house on fire and run. I hate spiders, right? So you have to look at it of what do you want in the first place? Do you want nice and sunny, or do you enjoy the winters, right? But if you're doing it for financial purposes, it makes way more sense to actually not have to pay income taxes on or state income taxes on the money that you're collecting. So for that alone, I would move. Now, if somebody's elderly, I would strongly recommend to not move into a condo, not move into a house. Not in Florida. It's a lot of work. Just to putting up the shutters for the tornadoes, it was literally 2 days. Granted, we have a very nice big house, but it's a lot of work. Doing the outside stuff, it's a lot of work. Maintaining a pool, it's a lot of work. Not having a pool and moving to Florida, you might as well just stay in Michigan. Because it's so hot, it's so enjoyable. You live on vacation, right? You live where people vacation, you have to have a pool. So I would recommend, if you're thinking about moving to Florida, get a condo, not a house. So then you don't have to maintain the outside stuff. So,
if you're being objective, would you suggest, this would probably go against as far as your profession, you trying to sell somebody's home or getting a listing, but would you suggest to someone before making the move, hey, maybe go rent somewhere for a period of time and see if because I've had a couple instances with clients that moved to Florida, and they're it's too hot, and they sold their house in Michigan and did vacation for a long period of time. It was during the winter months, Well, now that Florida was a primary residence, like, this is too much. So then they chose the other alternative, which was, hey, let's go to Arizona, which is, hey, it's 120 degrees, but guess what? But it's dry, right? It's just ridiculous. So now they're, when we talked to them a few months back, they're contemplating selling and moving back to Michigan because they're like, and so what would you suggest?
Why not have best of both worlds, right? Like, you could buy a cute little A-frame somewhere on a small little lake in Michigan, right, and turn it into an Airbnb, and just don't rent it in the summer months, right? Rent it in all the other months, so it kind of pay for itself, right? Even though the summer months are the best months to rent in Michigan, right? But even if it pays for half the mortgage during the year, right, where you just only have to pay for the second half, and then down here in Florida, do the same thing. When you're not here, just rent it out for a month or two, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a million ways to skin a cat, or stay down here, make the Florida house as your residence, and go up in the summer in Michigan and rent an Airbnb. So you're not here in the summers. That's what we are doing, right? We did keep our Michigan house, so we are going to be back there in the summer because I don't want to do summers here. It's way too hot for me.
Yeah. It's hot in the springtime when they're for whatever spring break vacation. So is there any different type of advice you give someone retiring, selling a house, versus buying, like, someone who is buying like a first or second home? So somebody like in their 20s or 30s are buying that first or second home versus somebody who's now going to retirement. I mean, is there any different advice that you would give?
Well, absolutely, right? Like, I literally have someone right now who's buying his forever home, right? So it's the last home he's going to buy. That's where he's going to live, right? And then when his day comes, it comes. So it's very different for what's the end result, what you're buying it for in the first place, right? So, for example, usually when people downsize and they're buying their forever home in that age of life, they don't want stairs. They don't want to have to go up and down, right? Even if they're healthy today, that doesn't mean that 6, 7, 10 years from now, they're going to be in the same condition. And if your bedroom is upstairs, you're going to have a really hard time getting up and down, right? So usually they end up choosing rent style homes. Even if it has a basement, they're probably just not going to go down there, right? But they usually want everything on one level. So that's usually what happens when people are ready to retire. The family home, on the other hand, younger people, right, that they're going into their first home, second home, maybe they're having a baby or two or whatever, right? It's very different, right? Because they usually would want to have the kids upstairs. So if they're having an adult night and the kids are already in bed, the distance is far enough where the kids won't be kept awake, right? So the reasons of how people look at homes and what they're buying it for is very different based on age gaps.
Yeah. So, and then the last question I have for you, the retiree needing to sell their home, they were diagnosed with some, or had a diagnosis, Parkinson's or some disease that is going to require them to have the care that's needed to go into, they can't receive that care at home, so they have to go into a nursing home or assisted living. What would you suggest for that, whether it be a spouse or the kids, that they're now in that predicament, they got to sell the home that they've been in for 30, 40 years. They don't necessarily want to, but it's a need. Like, what advice would you give them?
I mean, that's hard, right?
Yeah.
Like having to take care of your parents, but thankfully they take care of us. So when it's our turn to take care of them, right? I mean, I've never personally been in that situation. I had plenty of situations through my career. Then I was dealing with someone's children or someone's spouse, right? Because they weren't able to make decisions. You just have to make sure if it's the spouse that they're entitled, right? Because back in the day, especially if they bought it 10, 20, 30 years ago, right, the spouse might not be entitled. And back in the day, we had what's called dowries rights, but we don't have dowries rights anymore, which means that just because you're married to someone, that doesn't give you the right to sell or buy or whatever, even if you're legally married, right? So what they have to make sure is, number one, they have to look at how they hold title. If they're both listed, that's fine, right? But if only one of them is listed and now the other is supposed to be making decisions. So let's say the husband is listed on title, the wife is not, but the husband gets sick and now the wife's supposed to be making decision. The wife cannot sell without the husband because he's the only one on title. He's the only one who can make that decision, right? So what they need to do is called the quick claim deed, that they need to quick claim the deed, the option for this person to be listed, right? So if they can do that, or they could have maybe listed one of their child, right? So if something happens to maybe the mom as well, or the wife as well, then they have a third party like a son, a daughter, or somebody they trust to be able to make decisions in their behalf. But when you have multiple children, you kind of have to be very careful, because when you put a title in one child's name, it's in that one child's name.
Is that something, everything that you just mentioned, is that something that you as the real estate agent educates?
It would be a title company. We can
Okay.
give them advice, right? But the actual paperwork, everything will be done with the title company. And usually in these cases, especially if they're not selling, they just want to make sure that their paperwork is done properly. I would just call the title company that they close with, tell them what the situation is, and then they can advise them how to hold title, right? Like what is the best possible way. Liberty Title is the one title company that I've been using in Michigan. Today I own a title company. If you're more than happy to help them, it's called Academy Title. So if they go on academytitleagency.com, they can check out our title company and be more than happy to help them. Agents are usually not very much involved. If you think about it, when we get licensed in real estate, we get no title training. Zero, zilch. Same like in mortgage. You don't get any mortgage training when we get licensed in real estate. But I can't close without a mortgage, and I can't close without a title company. Sometimes without a mortgage, yes, because they're cash buyers. But without a title company, we can never close in Michigan. But we don't get actual training on title. What I know today is because of the experiences that I have gone through the years, right? But there's so much to title, and it's so, one little thing can mess up so much in your life, right? So what I would recommend is just to go straight to a title company, tell them your situation, maybe ask multiple opinions, just call multiple title companies, right? Because one might give you a different answer that you don't want to hear, right? And then go to the paperwork that you need to do to make sure that everything's set up properly when the parents are deteriorating.
So if you have, let's say, a potential client or a client that is in the process of, they have assets, right? So they have some level of wealth. Kids are grown, they've got grandkids. So going back to like the title company, I mean, is it important for when you're making that last transaction selling your home, is it important in your experience to have not only a qualified real estate agent, but working with a quality, like a real estate agent or attorney that really understands and makes certain that, to your point when you said you've got one kid that's on the title and there's 3 kids, but they're not. I mean, can you speak to that? I mean, in your experience, is there a way that they should?
So in my opinion, of course, they're entitled to an attorney. In my opinion, attorneys make everything way more complicated than it needs to be. Title companies are very regulated, right? Like there's laws and regulations that they have to obey by, right? And they've been doing this for a very, very long time. Now, of course, just like not every title company and not every title rep is created equal. If they're brand new in the industry, of course, they're not going to know as much as if somebody's been in it for 30 years and closed thousands of deals, right? So in those as well, I would do a little bit of a research, but I would not involve an attorney unless their case is very complicated. But if they talk to a title company and the title company says, oh, we have to get an attorney to do a quick claim deed, or we have to get an attorney to do a power of attorney, or whatever the situation is, right? That's different, but I would start with a title company. But of course, yes, start with an agent that is good. They have experience. I wouldn't, in this case, I would say I wouldn't go with the brand new agent, right? Because if a brand new agent never even done a transaction or 2 or 10, right? Having multiple parties involved and having power of attorneys and quick claim deeds and those things in places, they probably just won't know what it means. That doesn't mean they can't call the title company and get educated on it. But I think these are just a little bit more complicated. I would want to definitely go with an agent who's seasoned, right? And then get a title company. I would probably get multiple answers or opinions if the case is a little bit more complicated, and then just follow what the title company says. Usually what happens when they involve attorneys, your transaction is going to take way longer than it needs to take. And now you're paying another third party to do pretty much what a title company does anyway. Most title companies have an in-house attorney. They have to, right? For some cases, some paperwork cannot be written by us. So I would just stick with the title company. I wouldn't spend any unnecessary money on an attorneys unless we have like a situation on hand where maybe the kids are not agreeing, or maybe one is fighting the will, or you know what I mean? Like if it's things like that, then yeah, I bring in an attorney. But other than that, I would just stick with a really good agent in the title company.
So last, if you could leave us one, like 3 or 5 tips that you'd recommend for any buyer, seller, And then in closing, give us like some how would a client of ours or somebody just random person that watches the video, get a hold of you or your team to help them with their home?
Yeah, I mean, this is, again, a very loaded question because depending, right, on what they are trying to do. But let's look at from the seller's perspective, right? So from the seller's perspective, I would want to make sure that the agent they are hiring is not an iPhone agent. What I call an iPhone agent is, as I said, any agent can list a property into MLS. We all have access to it. We all have to pay certain fees as realtors every single month to have access to those things. We have to have access to the MLS. We cannot be licensed without access to the MLS, right? So just because an agent has access, that doesn't mean that they're going to go above and beyond with their services, right? And even today, sometimes I see $1 million properties and they're taking iPhone photos. If your agent is not even investing into like a 3D or not investing into a professional photographer or videographer or drone, let's say you have a lakefront property and you don't even have a single aerial photo of your property of like the water frontage and the woods around it and how beautiful your lawn is and all of those things, like, are you kidding yourself? Like, you hired someone who's mediocre at their job for your largest asset ever, right? Like, that's ridiculous. So it should be one of your first questions is how do they market it? Because marketing is what's going to bring the traffic, right? And the more potential buyers you have, the more power you have to negotiate, right? Because now we have multiple people to get the best one. So that to me would be the most important part is, do they go out and do they spend their own money so to help you market? Do they do open houses? Do they run Facebook ads, right? Like, do they do above and beyond just a local MLS? So on the seller side, that would be very important to me. The other thing that would be important to me is their negotiation skills, right? I would try to negotiate their commission. If I can negotiate the agent's commission, I would never hire that agent. If they can't even fight for their own commission of what they deserve, how are they going to fight for your bottom line? So if you can ask them, hey, would you reduce your commission from 3% to 2.5%, and they say yes without any negotiations, do not hire them. Because guess what's going to happen when the other agent is asking for your bottom line?
It's a great point.
So if they don't have negotiation skills, do not hire them. Right? One of my favorite things when they ask, first of all, I do not reduce my commission. I know exactly what I bring to the table, right? So if you are one of those people watching and listening who want an agent to reduce their commission, don't call me. It's never going to happen. And then the next thing is, my answer to that, if you would ask me that, it would be, okay, so let me get this straight. If I can't even negotiate my commission, you would hire me to negotiate your bottom line?
Yeah, I mean,
don't hire that agent.
Yeah, I've never thought of it from that perspective.
You're going to try to save a couple thousands on their commission and you're going to lose tens of thousands on your bottom line. It's not a good math. It does never, ever, ever equal out. The only agents that would reduce their commission, in my opinion, are the ones who are desperate for the next transaction. So I wouldn't do that. On the seller side. On the buy side, I would want to make sure that my buyer's agent, right? The buyer's agent gets paid from the sellers. The buyers don't pay for their agent, right? So what I would want to make sure that agent has connections. So for example, there's so many types of different loans on the market, right? But not every lender qualifies to give for that type money for that type of loan. So let's say there's a rural development. If the lender doesn't give access or they don't have access to a rural development loan, then their client can get qualified for a rural development, which is 0% down, right? So now we are talking, you could buy a property for 0% down because you would qualify, but the lender they recommended doesn't give a 0% down loan, doesn't qualify for rural development. Now you're going to get an FHO conventional. You're going to be bringing 3.5%, 5%, 20%, depending what type of property you're buying. That's money. Like, that's a bottom line difference, right? Yeah. So you need to know when the agent that you're working with, do they have connections? What type of loans, right? I work with multiple lenders because I want to be able to give a vacant land loan, want to be able to give a new construction loan, want to be able to give a veterans loan, want to be able to give a rural development 0% down, want to be able to do investments, want to do like private money, right? Like all of the things. So that would be most important to me as a buyer when I'm interviewing for my agents of, what type of connections do you have? Can I qualify for the best possible, right? Like the least amount down or whatever. Of course, like sometimes they they are buying investment property, putting 15-20% down, that's a different conversation, right? So I would want to make sure that that agent knows what they're doing. Now, they don't necessarily have to know the market, because in the end of the day, the system what runs the numbers, right? I just need to be able to log in to the systems, pull the comps really quick, compare that to apples, right? And tell you, spit out a number to tell you, yeah, this is the number that we should make the offer at, right? I have sold anywhere from Traverse City to Detroit, right? Everywhere in between. And I live in Pinckney, right? I have sold lakefront properties in Livingston County, and I have sold high rises in Detroit. So they are totally different from one another, right? But as long as we have access to the system and we can crunch our numbers and compare apples to apples, that's fine. The agent does not have to be local to know the local market. They just need to be able to crunch numbers in the system. It's just math.
So how would a client of ours or viewers, what's the best way to reach Gogo's real estate team or yourself?
Thank you. Yeah, we actually said it. It's gogosrealestateteam.com. That's our team, local team. But anything you want to know about me, it's gogobethke.com. So my name.com.
Okay.
Right? So anything I can help you with, don't hesitate, reach out to me. The best way is Instagram, and maybe for your people that is not the best way, right? Social media, but everywhere else I have virtual assistants. But feel free to find us anywhere. Someone from my team, even if it's not me personally, will get back to you. Gogobethke.com is your best bet. On there you'll find everything that we do, from buying to selling to podcasts to events to all of my companies.
And if you're a client of mine, if you didn't hear that or you can't, just reach out to me personally and I can put you in contact with Gogo, so I'd be happy to.
Exactly. That's probably the bestest way.
Yeah. So,
I don't give my cell phone number out there for the world, right? But if you want to talk to me directly, cell phone is probably the best. Reach out to Tyrone, and he has my cell phone number, so he can give it to you. If he trusts you, then I trust you.
So, well, thank you, Gogo. It was a pleasure to see you, even though it's over a screen. I'm glad you're doing so well and your success, and so wish you and the family. I told Dwayne, I said hi. Love his car. I love mine. So I was happy to see that on Instagram.
He's probably tinkering out there. He's probably watching job.
So, well, great.
Thank you guys. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks, Gogo. Bye.